Okay. Hi, everybody. I am starting 2 minutes early, but that's okay. I'm Susan Stone, and I am leading tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about winding up, actually, our series. We've been doing a series on the three poisons, as the Buddha called them, and that is greed, aversion, and delusion. And tonight we're winding up, and I'm going to be offering a talk and time for some questions as well on what I'm calling the mother of all delusions, which I'm going to explain to you in a few minutes. Judy, why don't you just leave it alone because we're going to do a talk first. Thank you, and then a little bit later. So that was my next comment. Talk first tonight. So this may throw a monkey wrench in some people's plans because sometimes people come to meditate first and then, they want to leave. So again, I will tell you, talk first tonight. Then we'll have a question and answer period, a discussion period, short break, and then a meditation. So if you're saying, oh darn, well, that's the way it goes. So the Buddha said several times, many times, that our actions are like seeds, he said. He said, if it's a good seed, if it's well watered, well lit by sun, then it bears good fruit, wholesome fruit. But if it's not a good seed, if our actions aren't well meant, aren't wholesome, then it will bear ill effects. We're going to have problems, in other words. And this is what greed, aversion, and delusion, and this is what he's talking about. The poisons are like seeds. They're like seeds. So as I said, this evening, I'm going to be talking about the mother of all delusion. Rather than trying to talk about delusion across the board, I'm going to focus in on the one, the key delusion, and that is the sense of a separate self. The sense of a separate self. We walk around, as every one of us knows, feeling like I'm an I. It's me. I'm here. And every one of us has that kind of sense. We're I's. Buddha said, He said, this is a delusion. It's not how we think it is. I'm going to be talking a lot about that. If you get maybe incredulous, it's like, what do you mean it's not like we think it is? He went even further, and he said, no self, he called it anatta in the ancient Pali language, no self is a characteristic of existence. Not only no self for human beings, but for animals, for things, whatever. It's no self. So, the absence of self, a characteristic of existence. And as I said, I think this is really hard for us to believe. I don't know what's going through your mind, but I know what at one time would have gone through my mind is like, maybe since nobody has yet got up to leave, maybe you're going to sit there and think about something else altogether. Something more pressing, like a problem in your family or what's for dinner or something like that. But the idea of no self is like hard, really hard. And I'll have to say that, first of all, I sympathize. I mean, more than I really understand it, because I was been in that same boat for quite a while. A long time, I had a problem on understanding this teaching. I knew that quantum physics tells us that there are no such thing as discrete selves. Everything is probabilities. It's energies. Okay, maybe energies, but I couldn't absorb that, never have been able to absorb that really into myself when it comes to quantum physics. And I didn't get it with the Buddhist teachings. They didn't really register. So, for example, here's a quote that the Buddha said, and it's from one of his discourses called The Simile of the Snake. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, not quoting, and he said that all material forms, including the body, and including whatever is regarded as one's possessions, all of these are impermanent, and therefore they can't be self. And he said the same thing about perceptions, feelings, thoughts and emotions and consciousness. He said, all of this, it comes, it goes, it passes. So it can't be self. And I have to say, I read that teaching for a long time, and I thought, well, why not? I just couldn't really get it. And we all know our emotions, our thoughts, everything changes quickly. Sometimes instantaneously. You're in a good mood one moment and something small happens and all of a sudden it throws you into a whole different mindset, a whole different framework. So why not, I thought. So I had really good intentions and wanted to understand but didn't. And maybe you come with some of the same mindset. Nonetheless, in the Buddha's teachings, he doesn't give way. Time and again, you come up again as you read his talks, his discourses, no self. And that the absence of self is a characteristic of existence. And not only the Buddha says that, but in one way or another, mystics, wise seers from all traditions say the same thing. In their own terms. They don't say anatta, no self, but they're saying the same thing. They're pointing to the same thing. So I think that for many of us, we may kind of put it on the back burner. Think, there's so much else that takes priority in our lives. So let me do that first, and then maybe someday I'll get to the other. And I think that's a pretty common mindset. You deal with what I can grasp now, and hopefully someday I'll get to the other. I think that it's important for all of us to really recognize and keep in mind, though, this teaching. Not just put it on the back burner. Let it just hover there in our mind. And keep inquiring. Be curious. With a curious mind. I hope tonight will maybe help throw some more light, or maybe won't, but maybe allowing you to put it into your mind in somewhat of a new way, or not. So I consider tonight's talk like a deep dive into an unbelievable topic. And saying that, I'll say, I'm hoping and feel that there's some of you here who are really ready to hear this. Maybe it's just what you need right now. And for other of you, you say, okay, back burner stuff. All is well, wherever you are. Back burner are like, wow, I'm getting it. There's something here that makes real sense. And just, with kindness, sparing, we're all in different places in our practice. Not bad, not good, doesn't matter. I had a teacher one time who used to say, what is it? He said, is it better to be 3 years old or 4 years old? Right. Okay, we're all in different places. The fact is, we're practicing. We're practicing. So there are a couple of really persuasive reasons, I think, for us to be walking around with a sense of self. And the first one, we have a body, right? If you step on my toe is going to hurt, not yours. Myself. And the second one is what neuroscience is showing, that we are wired to seek for threat, right? The brain is hardwired. We have what we call a negativity bias. That is how our species has existed. I think we have mentioned this so many times now in our talks here. I'm sure you've read it also. Our species existed because we have looked for threats. Every species that existed for the same reason. Wouldn't be here on the face of the earth. Minus the dinosaurs, I guess. Couldn't help it. It's becoming extinct. So we have existed because we have looked and detected threat. That sense of protection, scanning for threat, implies, doesn't it, a sense of self. Who's being threatened? A me. That's our first focus. A me is being threatened. So here we are, a sense of self. As soon as we scan for threat. And in fact, if you take this just a little bit deeper, if you start to realize that everything you see then, and everything you interact with, and everyone you see and interact with, it's done relationally. Relationship is a core. Because it's all in relationship to me and to mine, right? There's a me, and therefore there needs to be a you, things, that, out there, inside and more or less outside in different degrees. What's mine, which are closer to me, and what's not mine, and what are really enemies. So the moment we scan for threat, and we are hardwired to do that, there's a self here that we are protecting, trying to protect. Not only do we scan for threat out there and have a relationship with everything, but we have a relationship with the past and with the future. Our relationship with the past is based on our memories and what we remember was good, wholesome, supportive, mine, what I love, what I don't like. And we're geared by that. In our memories, we remember the past, its relationship, and we project, many times wrongly, but project anyway, just a way our brain works, a future, also based on these memories of what's mine, what's not mine, what's good, what's not good. So here we have a planet, more than 7 billion people walking around, each with their own definition. Isn't this amazing? How do we even manage? When you really stop to think of it, it's pretty awesome. When we each have different definitions, all walking around and interacting with each other. And everybody's got their own sense of, what's a threat, what's not threat, and then with different groupings. It's incredibly complex. All based, one, on physical body, but two, on this sense of threat. Friend, neutral, or foe. Like, wow. So, hardwired to keep ourselves safe. That means, as long as we've got a sense of self, we've got a feeling of separation, of incompleteness. Can't be any other way, to some degree of incompleteness. I mean, right now you may feel wonderful. For any degree of time you may feel wonderful. It passes. Why? Because you are a self, or you perceive yourself as a self. And a self has needs, a self has wants, things it wants to bring, needs in its life, or things it wants to push away and get out of its life. And therefore, by definitions, selves in a profound way aren't peaceful. Can't be. There's always this substrate of some kind of needs, as long as we've got a self going on here. So this teaching of no self, it's radical, and it can seem totally unreal. I think it does seem totally unreal. It's radical because it runs totally contrary to our instinct. Protect myself. That's an instinct, it's there. We can't help it. It's just who we are. Not to mention the fact that we've got a body that wants to try and to protect itself. To accept that a worldview, to hold it, isn't, in its essence, self-centered, overthrows everything we know. It's so fascinating. When you start thinking about what's self-centered, it's not just that you're hogging the chocolate cake. That's the most superficial layer. You really start thinking about it. And you realize that thoughts, to the extent that they come from a sense of self, are self-centered. Does that make sense? Comes from a very much deeper level. Love. But if it comes from a sense of self in that way, not in the hogging piece of chocolate cake way, but in another way, it's my love. And that's just how we live. And it's beautiful, isn't it? We know that. It is beautiful. And yet, the teachings go deeper. They go deeper. They say, it's not the whole story. It's not the whole story. So I said, and yet. There's a huge and yet in here. And the and yet is that, yes, a sense of threat, a sense of self is hardwired in to us And yet the Buddha and seers across the ages have pointed to something else. And they have taught something about universal humanity, something that's universal to humanity, not just as an ideal, not just when the moments when we feel expansive and loving for all, but on a whole other deeper level. They affirm, and they have experienced, we can assume, that deeper knowing. I've called it before and still think it's a great way of thinking about it. It's what the heart knows. Your heart knows. Our hearts know. The heart knows. It's what the heart longs for. When we get quiet enough to really pay attention, it's what the heart longs for. And that is, it longs for non-separation. On the deepest level, when we talk about peace, that's the peace. Not just a moment when we feel good as a person who have had a wonderful meditation experience or wonderful any other kind of experience, that are lying by the beach and everything is calm and quiet. Peace. That's phenomenal peace. I mean peace on the phenomenal everyday level. And it's beautiful. We all love it. We cherish those moments. But again, there is not the whole story. And there's something else that isn't on the level of things that come and go. And I think this is what the Buddha was talking about in the simile of the snake, what I just quoted or commented on a few moments ago, when he's talked about the body comes and goes, farms come and go, all of these come and go. He's saying there's something else. This is what he's pointing to that doesn't come and go. And I think just as we can say that this sense of threat or fear of threat and scanning for it is an instinct that's hardwired in us, so I think is this profound desire from the heart for peace. It's an instinct, I think. An instinct. The heart yearns for it. And more than that, the heart knows it. Maybe I'm saying an awful lot at one time, but the heart knows it because we are it. I'm going to come back to that. You are it. And you say, what? This is an incredible thing to be saying. So I'll say more about it. And again, if you're not getting it, please just let it flow. As they say it's at Shasta Abbey, a Zen monastery. Just put it on the back burner. Don't reject it and say, oh, it's crazy. Put it on the back burner. Maybe you don't get it now, maybe sometime else. Listening with the heart. That's what this has to be. A listening with the heart, not with that which we're so good at. We're so good at listening with the mind. So now we're trying to listen with the heart. Listen with the heart. So there's a real dilemma that goes on inside of all of us and in our training, our spiritual training, everything else. And it is the dilemma of the mind. I'm simplifying. The mind versus the heart. The mind wants to understand. The heart knows. And the two aren't readily reconcilable. Because what the heart knows can't be put into words intellectually. It has to be experienced. We have to get quiet enough to feel, to really hear what the heart really knows. So going back on a bit of an autobiographical note, and I said I wasn't for a long time convinced about the Buddha's teaching on no self. And here I am talking about it, like, what, is she a hypocrite? Well, maybe, possibly. But I will say, I had a hard time believing the Buddha's teaching, but I knew it. I knew it in a nonverbal way. And I have known it since I was 22. And I know there are individuals or people here who also know it. And maybe you don't want to recognize that you know it. Because we tend to bury it. The mind's got so many, oh yeah, come on, how could you know it? Or all the kind of things that our minds tell us. But it's there. It is there. Oh, I will have to say an autobiographical note again. This morning I really wasn't feeling well. In fact, I wasn't sure I was going to make it here tonight. And I thought, this is really funny. Here I am talking about about no self, and here's my body acting up, and I'm not sure I'm going to actually be able to make it. And then I realized, you know what? Even though my body is really having a problem, as it did this morning, there's still no self. Yes. I thought, wow. It was just like it just was a teaching in a way for me, a teaching in a way. Not that I wasn't experiencing my body, I absolutely was. But I knew that this no self is on a totally different level. It's on a different level. So some of you, as I said, I know have also experienced it. And we can say, and I will say some words, they're words you've probably heard from others as well, about being directly known, about being, you can call it isness or beingness, about being beingness, absolutely without conflict. It's complete. It's that completion that the heart yearns for and knows, but our minds can't settle down into it, can't believe it. And this is what can be called Buddha nature, and has been called Buddha nature, our true nature, or your natural state. And by golly, it can be called no self. I actually think no self is an unfortunate term. I think it, for us, as contemporary Westerners, it has such negative, what is this space, no self? It's hard to grasp, which in fact is just what the Buddha wanted it to be, hard to grasp, because if you grasp it, then you've got a thing, and he didn't want us to have a thing. We can go through that whole argument. Nonetheless, I think no self is not the most appealing term to try to even point to it. I think our natural state, our Buddha nature, our true self, kind of gets us more oriented differently toward it. Once it is known, really known, it can't be forgotten. You can bury it, that is, the mind can bury it, but you can't lose it. Why not? Because it is always here and always has been and never will not be, because it is, another word for it, I hate to use big words, ultimate reality. I say, oh no, But it is always there. You cannot lose it, no matter what you do. And I remember reading years and years ago, early spiritual teachers in this inner tradition. It was Ram Dass and Alan Watts, whom some of us gray-haired may have read some of their works. And they were both in some monastery, I don't know, Zen monastery, and they decided to be bad to see if they could lose it. And I don't know what they did, if they ate from the offerings on the shrines, or they were doing something bad in the monastery and laughing just to see if they could lose it. Well, the fact is, I can't remember what they said, but they couldn't. There's no losing it. You can't be so bad you don't have it. Why? Because it is you. That's it. So it's not about being ethical, although we need to be on our everyday level. And the Buddha said that time and again. It's not about being trying to be perfect. No bearing on it whatsoever, although we want to do the best we can. It's not about all those things that we revere and want to do to make life beautiful on our everyday level. It's so far beyond all of it. And that's why people in prison, we're not redeeming them. We're teaching them, those of you who teach in prison, the same thing that we're learning ourselves, who we truly are, who they truly are. Their true self, with a capital S, by the way, not the small self. So, this kind of shift, if you feel that, like, I just don't get it, it can be experienced at any time. It doesn't matter. You can say, oh, I remember somebody told me years ago, she was one of the members of our Sangha, and she said, I'm so remedial. She said, I just don't get this stuff. And she wasn't just talking about no self, but the whole thing. Well, none of us, it doesn't matter where we are. This is the truth regardless of where you are, So for me, going back to this, as I said, I didn't get it when I read the Buddha's teachings because I could only hear them as something I needed to aspire to. I read them as words and tried to apply them and tried to hear them, all the while not realizing that, hey, wait a minute, this was something I already knew. I knew. trusting yourself, trusting what you have deeply heard, not thinking, oh no, this couldn't be what they're talking about there. Yes, it is. Words have to be used, and this is not an experience that can be expressed in words. So it took me years, by the way, to put two and two together, finally realize that, hey, wait a minute, this is what I know what they're talking about. Like, me know what the Buddha is talking about? Yes, yes, and you do too. There are people here who do too, who do also. So I guess what I'll say, if you feel like this resonates somewhere and you have an inkling and glimpsed it, trust. Trust yourself. Trust that you know. Don't let the mind's doubts, which the mind is so perfect at doing, all kinds of doubts and qualifications and nuances and whatever. Listen deeper. Listen deeper. So in this light, I will say that right now I am kind of, facilitating and participating in a small self-inquiry group, which is meeting once a month, drawn mainly from our community. And we are inquiring into stepping out of a sense of self-deception. What does that really mean for each of us? This is not me talking. This is an inquiry group in which each of there are 9 people, it's small, it needs to be, are really inquiring, what does it mean? What does it mean for me? So I will be doing this again. Let me say that. I'll be doing this again here for the group. And I will say, I don't have the plans yet formulated. We've just kind of started in this inquiry group now. But if any of you find this like, wow, this is really compelling, I've put a sheet of paper on the table over there, and you are welcome to sign your name and email address, and I can keep in touch with you when I know more about, and can say more about when the second round will happen, because I don't yet know. We're just in the first round. But I know when we talk about spirituality, this is what the Buddha is pointing to. Finally. And I think this is so important for each of us to get down and truly recognize it. So I offer that if you're interested. So kind of wrapping up these comments, because I want to leave some time for discussion, if you wish, or questions. But I want to wrap up, and I've called the sense of separate self the mother of all delusions. By the way, the Buddha didn't say that. This was borrowed from the Arabic, that phrase, the mother of all delusions. The mother of all, and I've attacked on the delusions. But it is, because it shapes everything else we do. Greed, aversion, the other 2 of the poisons, they're shaped by our sense of self. What yourself may be greedy for, or that is, feel you need and want, even if it's a 3rd car in the garage, or whatever. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But wherever the margin goes from need to actually over into excess, this is because there's a sense of self there that really feels like it needs it. The pushing away, same thing. The sense of self shapes what we feel we need and what we feel we don't want, for sure. There is a story, comes from Asia, I don't know, probably India. It's about a monkey. And according to the story, some of you may have heard it, there was once a monkey who was kind of marauding a village and creating havoc. It was stealing food and overturning jars and doing this, that, and the other. And for all their efforts, the villagers couldn't capture the monkey. They couldn't get it. It was too fast for them. So what they did was they hired a monkey catcher, or probably it was one of their own villagers, became the monkey catcher. So what he did was he took a coconut and he drilled a hole in the coconut and he put a banana in that hole. And the hole was just the size of a monkey's fist. And the monkey came, the marauder came, He put his hand in, and by golly, he got that banana. The catcher came around, and the monkey wouldn't let go of the banana. If he had let go, he could have taken his fist out. But he kept it in there, holding on to the banana, and the monkey catcher caught him. So I bring up this story to say right now that, in a way, the way we hold on to the sense of self, there's a direct analogy here. The monkey could have been free if he had let go of that banana. He could have just dashed off and lived to maraud the village once again. We hold on to our sense of self, and it binds us. Suffering. We want this, we don't want that. So a direct analogy. And you can't, and obviously, I think by now it's really clear, you can't say, okay, I'm going to let go of my sense of self, like the monkey might have said, okay, I'll let go of the banana. No, that's a little bit more complicated, but there is really an analogy there. Listening to the heart and what the heart has to say. And just to make it really clear, in case I didn't, this knowing of a sense of self doesn't mean that you're living at some place up in the ether and your feet don't touch down on the ground. No, you're right here on the ground. And that's where it all plays out, right on the ground, involved in whatever you're involved in. There's not a thing in our lives we need to change, except the recognition more deeply of what's true. If you're into taking care of your family, you still take care of the family. Social justice, still social justice, whatever. It makes no difference. We need to do that. That's our human life. It plays out. And it plays out as an expression of what the heart really hears. So, allowing yourself simply to sit here and experience the sitting. Taking a deep inhale and then a long, slow exhale. Maybe a little longer than the inhale. And again, inhale. And then exhale. An untangling breath, you might say. And now just relaxing in your own natural pace of breathing, whatever it may be. Just relaxing. Noticing. Noticing the pace of your breath. The natural pace of your breath. Exploring this very moment of breathing. Is it smooth? Or maybe a little ragged? What is this moment like? This breath? Looking as closely as you can. Noticing this very breath. And noticing that thoughts have arisen, very likely, and they've passed away. Some of those thoughts you may have followed for a few moments, kind of hopped in the car of the thought and gone down the road with it. But it never stays the same, does it? It's here, and then it goes. And even so, there is something that remains, even while the thoughts come and go. What is it that remains? Noticing. Thoughts, perhaps some emotions, come, they go, they change. And through it all, something is here. An awareness of the coming, going, and changing. The awareness remains. Can you notice? Within the space of that awareness, the thoughts have arisen, the thoughts have passed. The awareness embraces, holds it all. I invite you to continue, if you wish, resting with your breath and noticing how the breath comes and goes, each one. Noticing the thoughts that arise and pass. And noticing the awareness that remains. To notice the awareness that remains, you need to change focus, don't you? Change focus from an intention of watching the breath or the content of thoughts to something else, to something that was behind the thoughts, embracing the thoughts, embracing the breath. Noticing. Back and forth if you wish, between the thoughts, the breath, and the awareness that they're happening. And now you might notice sensations in your body, allowing your attention to shift from your breath, from the awareness in which it happens, to the physical sensations in your body at this moment. You might want to notice any unpleasant, uncomfortable, or downright painful sensations that are present in your body right at this moment. Experience that. Where? Where is it located in the body? Again, it might be quite subtle. Something that just isn't entirely comfortable and pleasant. As you notice how these sensations shift, even microscopically shift. Perhaps it's a headache, maybe it's just a minor headache. Can you notice how the expression of pain changes? Maybe a little throb, maybe a stronger one somewhere else. Noticing that the body is like a field. All kinds of things are growing there, all kinds of physical sensations at any given moment. Some subtle, some not so subtle. Some uncomfortable, some painful, some pleasant. What a complexity. Scanning your body for the sensations there. Doesn't have to be any particular order. Just notice what you're noticing. Being mindful. And two, noticing little thoughts that tend to arise as you watch. They too come and go. Kind of like stars that twinkle in the sky. Here now, kind of blink out, then again, back. And as you notice the physical sensations in your body, I'm inviting you to turn the attention backward a bit, inward in a different way. Noticing the space in which those sensations occur, the awareness of them. while the sensations arise and sensations pass. There's something that stays. For a moment, touching in with that which stays, noticing it, awareness. Awareness has no shape, no form. That which we usually pay attention to in our meditation, breath, body sensations, sounds, all of those are kind of form. That's what the Buddha called them. They're forms. Awareness is different. It has no form. It's not an object. You can't focus on it like a thing. But stepping back from your attention on form, whether it's a breath, the body, whatever, stepping back, awareness is right there. And you can know it. You're aware of awareness. See that for yourself. Attention to breath, attention to physical sensations, experiencing awareness. This awareness which is utterly still. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken away. It is stillness itself. Being aware of awareness, even if just maybe a moment, or maybe you won't be aware. But exploring. Where is it located, this awareness? Does it have a location? Not to think about it, just to directly experience. This is your self-inquiry. Not to worry if you don't understand it. Exploring anyway. And so inviting you, be mindful of your breath, or your physical sensations in the body, and then explore what holds it, even as breath comes and goes, even as thoughts come and go, and sensations come and go. Something stays. And so, friends, bringing this meditation to an end, maybe we can set an intention to allow this awareness, which is our true nature, to touch into it, recognize it, and ever become a truer expression of it in this, your very particular life. May that be so for all of us. And knowing when indeed it is so, even as we work at it, you become a light. Your light shines. Others see. Now I'll say one more little comment before we end, and that is this being aware of our awareness is like mindfulness in a new key. It is mindfulness. Mindfulness that we usually practice is focused on an object, right? Any object, the body, the thoughts, all the objects. This is objectless. It's turning mindfulness around, but it is mindfulness. And this ultimately is what the Buddha was pointing to, inviting us to do. Not just our usual mindfulness, where we're aware of our body and et cetera, but turning it around and looking. The awareness that is